Good evening. This is the Thursday, March 27th, 2025 meeting of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. It is 7:01 by some clocks, 7:04 by a wall clock here. We are located currently at the Public Safety Complex at 576 Pleasant Street. We're also have a Zoom link, which is available online with our meeting notice posting. We are a committee of 7. There are 5 that are physically present in the Public Safety Complex. So 1 is joining us online via Zoom. That is 6. A quorum is 4. I declare we have a quorum and that we are open for business. A meeting notice has been sent to everyone, as well as having been obviously posted. First order of business is to review, I said certain CIPC meeting minutes because I didn't want to be date certain and find out that we might not have them all, but our capable clerk, David Bloom, has got them to us. They have been sent to everyone in draft form. We'll do them in order, which would be March 13, 2025. When I did send them to you, I made note, if anybody has different information, that we need to be mindful of, obviously, the text of the minutes, but also guests and visitors. Sometimes David has his back to the audience and may not know, and sometimes we don't always pick up who might be present on Zoom. So we want to make sure that we have everybody who joined us that evening. And the other thing, not so much on March 13th, but on March 20th, we want to make sure that the votes that were taken are accurate. So with that backdrop, is there a motion regarding March 13th meeting minutes?
I think I got one question.
Yep. Is your mic on first?
What's that?
Is your mic on?
Yes, it
Yep,
is.
Sorry.
On the police department, for the cruisers, for the 3 years, 3 new cars or 2 cars, the motion was made for 2 cars. They've got me voting yes, and I had voted no.
Correct.
Okay, I'll correct that for us.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. And Heather, if you look at item C, I don't know how you voted. It lists it as no. I thought you abstained.
On the police cruiser,
No, it's on the lift.
on the left, one I voted no, one I abstained. I think I voted no on whichever one came up first, and then I abstained on the second one.
Okay. So that
I do
would,
not recall, though, the order.
We'll go to the tape.
so with that one
Right?
correction,
Get right on that, Neil.
Yep.
with that one correction, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. I think we need to do a roll call vote. So, Bill?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark votes yes. The meeting minutes of March 20th. I think the same thing is in play. Checking guest visitors and how votes were cast. Is there a motion to accept?
Yes, so moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing
Yeah,
none.
wait, no, I have just, because I read this before, and then, David, wouldn't item 3 in these minutes in draft form, wouldn't there be a summation at the end that that's what it says here, we're Improvement Planning Committee report, so to review the capital improvement plan, but that's what we submitted, what those A through G.
Right.
So, following that, wouldn't there be like 3H saying, this is what we voted to approve to send to the select board? I know that we had a lot of discussion about that, but I guess it says to submit this report to the select.
That was the motion.
was the
Submit the
motion.
report to the select board.
All right,
I mean, I can change the
thought-
wording if you
I wanted it
would like it
bigger print, bold type,
bigger print. Okay.
bold type, I like bold type. But, okay, I'm good.
Okay.
So
No more
the,
discussion.
so that's the essence of the report, and the motion was to submit the report.
Okay, we're there, okay.
So a motion's been made and second.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Bill?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes,
Heather?
Yes.
Mark votes yes.
all right.
So, going now back to our agenda. You recall on Monday evening when our Capital Improvement Planning Committee report was submitted to the Select Board. We were present as the committee report was reviewed. Some items quicker than others, but there was, in particular, an item in the report which I'll refer to as item number 4, because that's how it was identified in the report, having to do with the police department request for cruisers. And our report indicated that we were submitting approval of 2 cruisers, whereupon the request was for 3, but the deliberations included 0, 1, 2, or 3. And we landed at 3.
Two.
Excuse me,
2.
2, thank you. And we basically used the number that had been submitted to us and took the liberty of rounding a little bit and landed at $90,000, essentially $45,000 per vehicle, over 3 years. So the $90,000 would be $30,000 per year. The Select Board essentially asked whether or not we would consider reconsidering that, and be it as it may, I think I made an executive decision that evening not to deliberate that matter that evening at that forum, but agreed to reconvene the group to talk about that particular matter, which is central to our agenda. So I think in terms of what the request has been made, we should focus on the request that was made to reconsider item number 4, having to do with the cruises. Is that a fair summation by
Yes.
everyone?
Yes, but no, and I don't know if it's sitting in this seat, because I had the pleasure of watching the Finance Committee meeting last night, and my predecessor who sat here said he understood, but he still had questions, so I'm kind of in that boat. So,
Okay, so let me interject.
All right.
There were other recommendations of the Select Board to go to the Finance Committee,
understood,
which met last evening.
understood,
That is not in front of us this evening.
understand that too.
Okay.
So, as a member of this committee, we have invested a lot of time since January, or actually since December. And we've made special commitments to be here. And you have accommodated, some commitments that people had during this, because I think this year, in terms of the number of meetings that were held to get to the point we're at as of last Wednesday, took a lot of effort. And we put a lot of time and effort into that to come up with that report. And I felt a little slighted by having the select board come back at us and pressure us, particularly last Monday night, or this past Monday night, right here, as we're convened as a board to say, well, you're all here in place, let's make a motion, let's discuss right now and have an answer. And I almost made a motion that night to make the motion to let the report stand and let's see what happens and go from there. And that's kind of where I am tonight. I mean, we spent all that time, we met with people, we took all the input from every source that we could get, and then the committee actually had other information to help make some of those decisions. And I feel right now, as I said, I feel a little slighted that I don't want to cave into the pressure. I would say right now, the report stands as we've submitted it, and that's kind of the way I feel right now. So I don't know how anybody else in the room or the committee feels, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I got a couple clarifying questions, Mark. So if we submitted three
Reports or?
three cars, three
Okay.
cruisers, because it was clear that the select board felt they had options to fund it. I don't know what they are, but that was the suggestion Carol was making. Then they would have the option to fund 1, 2, or 3, right? They don't have to go to the full boat, and that's the clarification that I just want to make.
I believe their option would be limited to 3 cruisers.
Okay. So the backdrop coming into this was we're going to have a tough budget year, and I'm assuming that hasn't changed. Unless it has and there's new information, then I'm all ears. And we did verify with the chief that he could make 2 work. So, given that, I'm going to stand with Neil that I think we put a lot of thought and work into this, and we need to stick with it. It's the right thing for the voters for this year. I do understand that prices may go up in the future, but I think we're dealing with this year, not next year, not the following year or the year after.
So just in the event that somebody may challenge us, let me interject as chair. Typically, a motion is made and it's second, and then we open it up to discussion. But frequently, the chair has the option to dispense with that process, and that's what we're doing right now. I'm going to, with your blessing, allow the discussion to take place, because I think it will lead to a better motion. So Neil and David haven't already spoke. I'll speak. I think what anybody who's involved in this and has watched this carefully should not lose sight of the fact that there were 4 options regarding police cruises that we deliberated. One of them was no cruises, and then 1 and 2 and 3. And one of the motions, that being 0, is getting no play, but for a certain period of time, that was getting a lot of play because of the very point that you're making right now. This is a very difficult budget year, and notwithstanding the process that had been in place previously to do the 3-year, these are not the same years, these are not the same times, these are not the same processes, that maybe this is the year to hit pause and skip a year and see where overrides and budgets and things of that nature fall out. That didn't gain popularity with the majority, but I don't want to minimize the fact that it was talked about. And the way I felt that 2 was the perfect compromise. It wasn't 3 in terms of what they asked for, but I would remind everybody the Wachusett Regional School District asked for 2 boilers, and we gave them 1. The library had a project of $17,500 that they only asked for for $5,000, but we didn't give them the whole project either. We deferred to them to go to their library trust fund. So my takeaway is nobody got everything, but everybody got something. And I think that's the perfect balance of what we spent 2 months, 10 weeks or longer going through. And we landed, there was a minority position, I understand, but the majority landed on 2 vehicles. And I think for us to change that now, which was not unreasonable or unrealistic, and that was our position, if we change it, then the question becomes, what's the good of meeting and what's the good of having a report if every time we submit it, nobody likes it and it comes back to us? I understand that the chief, who I want to be very respectful because he's not here this evening, but I want to compliment him. He does know the automobile industry very well, and that played heavily into my determination. But we know capital assets, and we know budgets, and we know finance restrictions very well. And that's the hardest part of this committee, is to balance what everybody wants and try to determine what a want is and what a need is, and to balance that with the public's finances and the debt exclusions and the overrides and the like. And this was apparently not perfect in the eyes of everyone, but this was the perfect compromise in the eyes of me as a committee member. So I stand by the report that was submitted as well.
May I follow up?
Sure.
Okay. I agree with, again, everything that you just recapped that we went through. However, my decision came out of conversation that Chief Savasta gave to us. And he said, standing at the podium, do I want 3? Yes. Do I need 3? No. I can get by with 2. And I think that was the statement that allowed me to sit here and say, as you said, he wants something, but he can get by with, and with money's as tight as it's going to be, I think that was the compromise, and we're asked to compromise every day. And I just kind of, it was his words that rang home to me and saying, I can get by with 2. And there is still the risk that if the overrides or whatever, however this goes down, it still could end up at 0.
We have 2 overrides that are proposed within a year of the state, actually less than a year. They both failed.
Yeah.
If we're proposing another override that is of equal or equivalent amount, I can predict the result. They're going to fail. We're going to get nothing.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, kind of where I'm at. I mean, I watched Finance last night. I watched it today, behind, but there was a lot of discussion about, what's coming, how short are we, where are we going to be?
Yep.
And I'm just not sure what the appetite is in town right now. In an ideal world, I'd like to get 3 this year and then next year get 1 if he needs 1 or whatever. But we don't have that luxury today. We really don't. And I'm not speaking from the finance side. I'm just speaking as a taxpayer and a committee member here saying, we did our work. I think we came up with a solution. It may not be the best for everybody, but it was the best for what this committee's work could come up with. So I'll stop.
Others?
Well, here's how I look at it. Everything Neil said is absolutely true. But then again, we're a part of a 3-pronged process. We made our recommendation and went up to phase 2, select board. They didn't seem to like it for some reason. I don't know how they get that reason or how they came about that thought process, but it wasn't what we had presented. And they seemed confident with 3 cruisers. Then, if they're confident, the chief is confident. Now we go to phase 3, the voters. And like you said, if the chief is so confident in the select board that they want to roll the dice at the town meeting and go for 3, I personally say give them the opportunity. Because the whole thing is a crapshoot, and the whole thing is this. Based on last year and what we know this year is, It's very hard for anybody to come in from any department and ask for something the way this town financially is. And the finances are not going to change here. Unfortunately, the needs do change, and there are certain needs that you can never change. And then we have union contracts and this and that. So he put on a great presentation. As a matter of fact, I heard it so many times I got it memorized. And God bless him, he's got it right on the numbers. I look at it this way. What he told us was, I got one shot, and one shot only, to get the 3 cruises, outfit them with what I've got, or the next time when I go into the valley of the shadow of death, the town is gonna be paying almost as much as, for one cruiser, that he might be paying for 1.5 cruisers, and plus, they have to outfit that cruiser. I say, if he's confident, the select board for some reason is backing him, I say give it to the voters, I'm going for the 3 cruisers.
So, Bill, you said the select board's confident and the police chief's confident. Can you define what you mean by confident?
Well, the police chief stands up there and tells us he wants the 3 cruisers. Then he says, well, maybe I get by with 2. Then we go to a select board meeting. I was a selectman, I know politics. Suddenly they come up with, I think 3 is a better idea. Does that just come out of the clear blue sky? Maybe, but I'm not gonna say it does. So evidently, they seem to think 3 is what the way to go. Okay, initially he wanted 3, they want 3. Let the voters decide if they want 0, 3, or 2. If they decide 3 is the way to go, the town is way ahead of it now because they got 3 new cruises, and maybe the Economic Development Board will come up with a miracle where we can bring more tax money into this town, which I strongly doubt.
What, Bill, how do the voters get to choose 3, 2, or 1? I mean, if they put forward the warrant article and say it goes down in flames, then what do? We're going to have a different override like we did last year?
That's
So we're
their
gonna-
problem. They're the ones that are saying that they want to go forward. They feel confident they can do it. We did what we had to do. We gave them a strong recommendation.
And that's where I'm coming from, saying we gave the recommendation.
And if we
Our
give it back
policy
to them,
is to do
they're
this.
still not going to go buy it. They don't have to go buy it.
Well, based on the ask the other night, or the insistence, it wasn't an ask, it was take a vote right now. You got everybody sitting here, do it. And I didn't like that. We did the work, we sent the report. I don't even know, pardon my disrespect to the chair, but I don't even know why you agreed to have the joint meeting. It was another night, I thought it was going to be over in 10 minutes, and we sat an hour and 38 minutes into it and still discussing it.
I
So-
got one question. Your finance board opinion, if there was no override funded, based on what you know about the current money situation, would you buy 3 cruisers? Would it make it into that budget?
Well, I'm going to answer that differently, David. I'm not begging the question. What you want to keep in mind that actually if everybody has their report, or at least maybe you've memorized it already, you want to keep in mind that the decision on putting the asset, a boiler, an ambulance, or cruises, the decision to put that forward is solely the Capital Improvement Planning Committee decision. 0, 1, 2, or 3. Once it gets to the select board, how they recommend the funding is totally out of our hands and completely in their hands. So you're saying in terms of, and I've heard override a couple of times, it's entirely possible that they could come up with a funding recommendation that it doesn't go to the voters at all. It's not part of the override. They use capital depreciation funds, which only needs to go to town meeting, but it doesn't have to go to the voters. So I wouldn't want us to make our decision based on funding over which we have no control over.
Right. Good point.
I think that's an important distinction.
Oh, it is, it is.
So having said that, Bill, I come back to you, and if the funding is not an override, and the funding does not take it to the voters, but only to the town meeting, what you're feeling in terms of that information now that you have after you spoke.
I feel the same way. If they can find the money, buy the 3 cruisers.
So once again, I hesitate to talk about funding because it's their bailiwick, not ours. But you recall that the conversation that evening was to take, if it's 3 cruisers, take 1-year cruisers out of the capital depreciation fund, which has very limited resources, and put the second and third year in the annual budget, which there's no room in the annual budget in the future years. We're having a 1.1 or $1.2 million budget deficit this year. So we would add the cost of a cruiser to ensuing years. So not my say, but do I love the idea of what they have proposed in the way of funding? No, I do not.
Well,
I-
go ahead, David.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the clarification, Mark. Our main role here is to recommend capital assets that are a balance between what's needed and what is asked. And I think we've done that with this report.
Agree.
You're right, the funding mechanisms are not of our purview, but we believe this recommendation, DPW, the boilers, the cruisers, is a good, smart balance to meet the needs.
So we've heard from 4.
Run, Forrest, run.
Well, I'm still with my original feelings to still recommend 3.
Which was your original vote?
Yes.
And I've tried every time that we mention the vote that was taken, I don't name you by name, but I give recognition that there was a minority position. So that's 5 we've heard from. I think there are 6 present. Heather, I offer the opportunity for you to weigh in the discussion.
I appreciate that offer. I'm going to abstain.
Okay. So I guess I would say, is there any further discussion before I ask for a motion? So the motion could be, point of clarification?
Yes, so if we make the motion that, my motion would be the report stands, and then we done for discussions this night, or are we going to talk about other things?
So let me put
That's-
that on the
thank you.
table.
All right.
The question, the motion could be, I believe, to recommend changing the report, or a motion recommended to leave the report as submitted.
All right, and if we do that, then all discussion of any other changes to the report, the 6 items or 5 items, are done at that point, correct?
If we vote not to change the report, there's nothing to talk about further about the report.
So we can go home early and watch basketball, okay.
Possibly.
All right.
So is that a fair understanding? I feel like I'm at the Super Bowl. Heads is tails and.
Heads you win, tails I lose. yeah.
Exactly. So if that's not clear or not fair, I'm happy to entertain, so you would make a motion. Now, if the motion is to change the report, then there would be motions to change the report to what? So the question is, a motion to keep the report or a motion to change the report? That's where we are.
Further discussion then.
Yep.
I don't want to get to that point of the report in its finality or totality. I wanted to, after watching your meeting last night, there's another article in here, the DPW lift, and we've capped it at 12.5, and it appears it's approaching $15,000.
Totally different item that I may take up later, because I remind you again,
Okay?
as friends, that that's a finance committee issue,
Okay.
okay? I want to keep them separate.
So even if we put the lift forward, you're going to find a way, whatever the dollar value is, whether it's 12,000, 13, 14, 15, that's what it gets to when it gets to that point.
So let me qualify again. No, I don't think we're going to change that lift.
Okay, I'm in favor of the lift, it's just the
Yeah.
dollar amount, so we
No.
kind of, we moved it up from 10.5 to 12.5. And after watching last night, it appears we're at almost 15 grand.
Yeah. Once again, the lift is our recommendation.
Good, all right. I make the motion then.
So wait a minute.
All right.
So now we're back to the motion to
I have a question before you make a motion.
change the report or don't change the report.
Can you make a motion just to change one item in a report? Is that a valid motion?
No, because that's changing the report.
We're changing the report.
Yeah, well,
So,
well, you look at
so the
that.
point is, we're going to make a motion to either change the report,
Okay,
and then the question would be,
Then you
what
can-
are we changing?
okay.
Or initially, but we got to get to that point, or not changing.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to stand where I started. I make a motion to not change the report.
I'll second that motion.
So a motion's been made, a motion's been seconded. Is there any discussion? No discussion. So the vote, I'll start with the motion maker, Neil.
I vote yes to leave the report the same.
David?
Yes, to leave the report the same.
Bill?
No.
Forrest?
No.
Mark votes yes, leave the report as is. Heather?
Abstain.
She abstained.
What's the current vote on this one?
To change the report or not?
And what's the tally so far? 2 yeses, 3 nos.
Yes.
I thought she abstained.
I'll abstain.
Abstain. So the motion passes to leave the report as is. Footnote to which the funding is up to the select board.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. So, there's items under our notice here of new business, old business, and I would think that perhaps you may want to raise the question under old business regarding the report that's not being changed, having to do with the lift. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'll discuss it, yeah, okay, if we're gonna, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking you to, I'm giving you the opportunity if you'd like to.
All right, no, I'd like to. Again, I'm gonna start off by saying, I'm in favor of the lift. The DPW needs the lift. It's just a question of, when we started a week and a half ago, it was $9,700, and you, you with your blasphemous comments saying, I think you need to get it to 10. And then with a blink of an eye, we got it to 10.5. And then I went back and watched the meeting because David's report said that the lift had asked for 2 rolling jacks.
Right.
And that changed the 10.5 to put it up to almost 13 grand. And when I watched last night's meeting, there is an additional charge of $2,800 for freight. So now we're up almost to 15 grand. So as I said, I'm in favor of it, but I just think if it doesn't concern this board in terms of the amount, and we have money buried in a tin can under the DPW, and they're gonna go find what they need to get it, I want them to get it. I just want to be upfront with the voters and the residents in this town as to why we agreed to it. That's all.
So I think as, not so much liaison, I want to make sure I don't use that phrase, but the crossover member between finance and capital, which is the role that I play. We submitted, which in our report is number 5, fully supported. I don't think there was any hesitation at all regarding supporting the lift. In fact, we did a lot of, no pun intended, heavy lifting to get it to where we got it. And became experts on 10,000 pounds, 12,000, 14, 18,000 pounds, four-post, two-roll rails, et cetera. The last item that I have right in front of me was 12,397. And we rounded up to 12,500. And we submitted our report. Since that time, the number has changed. I would submit to you that that's not reason for us to change our report, even though we may support a higher number. I think it's got to be played out in terms of where do we go from here now that it's a couple of thousand higher, because at the Finance Committee the other evening, it was at 14,000 plus, of which the Recreation was willing to put in 2,000, which brought it down to 10,008, which is not
12,600.
very far away from 10,000.
No, 12.6. It took-
12, 12,
14 to
sorry.
12, right, okay.
So I think we need to leave it alone.
Okay.
At this particular point. Now, you'll also know, and I think I shared with you, the request, we made the recommendation that this be taken out of capital depreciation fund. The select board asked whether or not it could go before finance to be taken out of the reserve fund, which has $28,000, which in its coffers, so to speak, for the rest of the year. And last night, that same evening, $27,000 worth of requests were made, and a new one came to my attention today, which would throw that reserve fund into a deficit position, which eventually would render it academic, because we don't have the money to fund them all. So last evening, the Finance Committee voted not to take money out of the reserve fund for the lift, which means it goes to the select board. Still the lift, which we recommended, the way of financing it is up to them.
Perfect.
So that's where we're at.
Mark, was there going to be another price increase on the lift from?
April 15th. However, we have the ability to give the supplier a commitment that we'll take the lift and he will go find it. It is not in New Hampshire right now. As of 5 o'clock this evening, it is not there. It may be as close as South Carolina, or it may be as far away as Temecula, California. But once we commit, he will go find it. But until that happens, he said it's like trying to herd cats. It's a moving target, and the goal line just keeps shifting. He could find one next week, and it could be gone the day he finds it, or whatever.
But what you're saying, if he gets that committal, it will stay.
Right. He will go get it, and it will be there waiting for us to pick it up. So how far away is the town meeting? 5-6 weeks?
May 5th.
May 5th, so that's 5 weeks. And, you know, it may take him that long to find it. But that's not, again, our decision. I think we're overstepping, but I wanted to have up-to-the-date numbers. And as 4:54 this evening, that was the number.
So I think we should be, as a committee, because we were totally supportive of the vehicle lift.
Yep.
Well, I think the vote was enthusiastically unanimous. Whether or not there has to be some tweaking relative to the pricing and the funding, I would hold off for that discussion to take place.
Perfect.
Not for us to change our report in anticipation of a moving target. We submitted 12.5 at the time. I have the document right here. I'm looking right at it, 12,397. and that's how we rounded up to 12.5. If that changes a little bit, let's wait for that to come back to us in
Perfect.
terms of whether or not we need to modify the amount.
And I guess I agree with you now that I think about it, because we're putting forward the item, the asset, and it is going, it's whatever it falls in when they get it or acquire it, that's what we're going to pay. So whether it's up or down, so that's where it needs to be, so.
I mean, I should know this, but I don't, but if we okay $300,000 for a Freightliner and then it costs $310,000, it's never come back to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee to change it.
Correct.
So otherwise we'd be changing this report 10 times, because of a different, pricing cost.
Right.
So I think we submitted this fully supportive of the asset with the best financial information that we had at the time, documented, and we live with the report. If it comes back, we'll deal with it then.
Is that the last item there, Chief?
I have nothing for further. Is your NCAA bracket
Yes,
still
sir.
alive or
Yes, it
something,
is.
or what?
It is.
So is there any further old business, any new business? We've worn out our popularity. There's no public comment. Anybody here to public comment? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? None. All in favor of adjourning? Bill?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Mark votes yes.
Okay.
We're adjourned.
Okay. At